Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today, let's make a reverse dyed burst. I'm going to start with a black 100% cotton Gildan shirt. I'm going to begin by centering the shirt, and this process is going to go really fast. But I have a link down below this video in the description for another video which shows how to center a shirt. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm getting both halves of the front of the shirt right up next to each other and both halves of the back of the shirt right up next to each other. That way, whenever I do any kind of process like removing the color or applying dye, when you look at the front of the shirt, both halves of the front of the shirt are going to look basically like each other, and the same thing with the back of the shirt. Normally, I use a washable marker for this process, but since this is a black shirt, the washable marker won't show up very well. So I'm using a chalk pencil. I'll put a link to that too down below this video in the description. To make the burst area, I'm going to draw half of a circle onto the shirt, and I'm going to do this circle about level with the armpit of the shirt. To make it easier, I'm just using a roll of tape that I have and tracing around the edge of the tape. Now I'm going to fan fold this line, and then I'm going to tie it with some sinew. Sinew is wax coated, so where I place this sinew line and I tighten it down really tight until it locks down on itself, that is going to form a waterproof barrier. And it's not going to allow the color remover under there, and it's not going to allow the dye under there. So where I place these sinew lines, that part of the shirt is going to remain black. After I have the initial sinew line tied, I'm going to go ahead and straighten up my fan folds on either side of this line and continue tying sinew lines. As I go out toward the center of the burst, I'm going to make my lines closer together. And then as I go further away from the center, I'm going to make my lines further apart. For time's sake, I'm going to go ahead and speed the video up quite a bit through this part. If you'd like to watch it a little bit slower though, if you click on the settings icon on YouTube, you can either speed up or slow down the video, whichever one is more comfortable for you. For the color removal process, I'm going to use a product called Brite Laundry Whitener, and I normally purchase mine at Walmart on the laundry aisle. They place it by the bleach products even though it's not really a bleach product. It won't damage the fabric like bleach will, and it doesn't have to be neutralized. However, if you can't seem to find any at any of your local stores, I have a link down below this video where you can purchase some from Amazon. I'm removing the color from quite a few shirts all at the same time, and this shirt is the black shirt at the bottom of the container. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to sprinkle some White Brite powder over the top of all the items. And I'm doing this process outside because White Brite does have a smell, and I am also wearing my respirator through this entire process because I don't want to inhale any of the powdered White Brite or the fumes from the White Brite. Now I'm going to pour a pot of boiling hot water over the top of the White Brite. And if you'll notice, the minute that boiling water touches the White Brite, it starts to foam and immediately remove the color. I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle a little more White Brite over the top of everything, and then I'm going to add in a second container of boiling hot water. I like to have the items fully submerged in the White Brite solution. Then I'm going to use a pair of metal tongs, and I'm going to move the items around in the solution. I want to make sure they all get well saturated. As I'm noticing the color being removed from each item, and I feel pretty happy with where it's at, I am going to take each item out of the solution, take it to my utility sink, and rinse it really well in cold water. Then I'm going to place the items into my washing machine and wash them in cold water along with a little bit of Dharma's Professional Textile Detergent. By the way, I'm leaving all these items tied for this entire process. I'm not going to untie them until I'm finished dyeing them. After coming out of the washing machine, I placed each item into my soda ash solution and allowed it to soak about 20 to 30 minutes until it was fully saturated. Then I wrung it out on my Panda spin dryer. And just so that you're aware, whenever you place an item that's either been previously dyed or was a colored shirt and had part of the color removed, a lot of times some color does soak out of those shirts into the soda ash solution, along with some smell. So just be aware of that. I try not to contaminate my large soda ash solution. I use another bucket or something whenever I soak these kind of shirts. Then I placed the shirt aside and I allowed it to dry out completely before I went ahead and applied the dye. For this shirt, I'm going to incline ice dye it, but you really don't need to incline it. Truthfully, it's not worth the effort because since I've tied it with sinew, the dye's not going to be able to run very well, and it would be easier just to go ahead and dye this shirt while it's still laying flat. I just kind of was on autopilot. Normally, I dye bursts at an incline, so I just did that. So I did tie a piece of kite string around the very end of the shirt and then clipped the other side or the other end of the kite string to the end of the piece of vinyl guttering so that the shirt won't slide out of the guttering when I incline it. I also lightly sprayed the shirt with a soda ash solution that I have inside of a spray bottle because the shirt is completely dry, and that will help the dye to stick to the top of the shirt a little bit better. So for this shirt, I've chosen a color combination that I think is really cool right up next to black, and it's a purple, magenta, orange combination. Purple and magenta go really well together, and magenta and orange go really well together. But if you mix orange and purple together, sometimes you can end up with some brown. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do purple, magenta, orange, magenta, and purple. So I'm going to put like orange in the middle with magenta on either side. I hope that makes sense. And I'm going to keep this pattern up all the way down the shirt. So the colors that I'm using are English Violet from Dye Spin, Pure Magenta from Dye Spin, and Deep Orange from Dharma Trading Company. And I'm going to put one color in each of the sections formed from the sinew. Now that I have all the dye on the shirt, I'm going to add an additional sprinkle of dry soda ash over the top and then add on some ice. Then to incline the shirt, I'm going to go ahead and place one end of this vinyl guttering down inside of a plastic tote and leave the other end hanging over the edge. That's going to place the shirt in an incline. I'm going to do a little touch up on the ice because sometimes it shifts when you first incline it. And then I'm going to place this container aside and allow the ice to melt. After the first layer of ice melted, I had some undissolved dye left sitting on top, so I went ahead and added a second layer of ice and allowed it to melt. After the second layer of ice melted, I let the shirt process for about 48 hours before I began rinsing it. To rinse the shirt, I took it to my utility sink and I began rinsing it in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. Then I untied the shirt and warmed the water up to hot and continued rinsing the shirt in hot to try to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. Instead of rinsing for a long time, I went ahead and soaked the shirt. And to do that, I ran some really hot water in my utility sink, added a little bit of Blue Dawn dish soap to the water, placed the shirt inside, and just allowed it to soak. When the water cooled off, I changed it out and I continued that soaking process until my water was remaining almost clear. Then I placed the shirt along with some Dharma's professional textile detergent into my washing machine and I washed it using a hot water cycle. Okay, so the shirt has been washed, dried, and ironed, and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? So this one is not what I expected, and I know exactly why it wasn't. You know, I always say on thick folds like mandalas and geodes that you need to let your shirts dry out between tying them and applying the dye. Well, I did not allow this shirt to dry out between tying it and removing the color. And I had the same problem as I would have had if it was a white shirt and I tried to dye it while it was still damp. There was too much moisture in the shirt and the shirt didn't soak up the Out White Brite solution the way it should have, and so I have lots of black left in the shirt. That is not a desirable outcome for me. That's not what I was expecting. However, I do have to say, I think that it looks kind of cool paired with the black, the colors that I used. I think that's kind of a cool effect. When you look at the shirt from the front, honestly, I think it kind of looks like a lighthouse with the light streaming out. The back doesn't quite look that same way, but I don't totally dislike the shirt, but it is definitely not what I was expecting. And I'm using this as a teaching tool just to show you the mistake that I made so that the next time you go to do a shirt like this, you're going to think about this shirt, hopefully, and say, I probably should let these shirts dry out in between tying them and soaking them in Out White Brite. Because you know, you can't see the inside of the shirt to see if you've removed the color. So I had no idea what was going on the inside of this shirt until I untied it at the very end. From the outside of the shirt, it looked like the color had been removed. But like I said, that Out White Brite didn't get all the way into all of those folds. So I do think this is kind of a cool shirt just because of the colors paired with the black. But it's not at all what I was going for or what I was expecting. But let me know what you think. Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.